All yours, man.
What's up, guys? I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and Coach D, your kind words as always. My name's Mike Vannucci. I spent some time at the Division II level, spent some time at the high school level where I am now, and I run a receiver academy on Long Island. I played a few years overseas in Italy, and here's my contact info here. If you ever need anything, or you ever want to talk about anything, I love talking ball. Doesn't even just have to be a receiver play. Today we're going to go over progressing route running through individual drills, and we'll touch base on a couple ideas that I use with indie drills towards the end of the presentation. So just some presentation objectives. We're going to go over an overview, some mindset stuff. We'll go over 90-degree breaks, 45-degree breaks, speed cuts, slants, winning with our feet, and how to structure our indie. All right, real quick before we dive into that, just going over some basic motor learning stuff. This is Fitz and Posner's theory of motor learning, the stages of motor learning. I think it's important we understand who our guys are as learners. There's no one person the same. So the first stage is that freshman that walks in first day, his head's going to explode because of the information overload. He's picking up on every stimulus he can. How you move, how the guys that have been there move. How to do things, how you demonstrate things, how you say things, learning what to do, how to do it. A lot of inefficiency, a lot of errors until that light bulb kind of clicks and they kind of get it. This is where that subconscious incompetence, there are flaws in their movement, but they don't really know why. They're not thinking about them. The next stage is the associative stage. This is where their movement becomes a little bit more consistent and refined. And now they're more consciously incompetent, where they're doing things wrong. They're moving inefficiently, and they know they are, or they can move efficiently, but they have to think about it. And finally, we're in that autonomous stage, which are your seniors, your guys that have been in the program, or guys that pick things up quick. Everything's habitual. This is where our goal is to get our guys to this stage. Things become second nature, and it's subconscious competence. They don't have to think about it to execute it properly. Our mindset, I'm a big we not me guy. So when we talk about statistics, nobody had 100 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game, right? It's how many yards did we have? Like, we threw for 350, we had 350 yards receiving. We had 5 touchdowns. It's not split up. It's not divvied up. It's a unit and it's a group, whether you're number 1 on the depth chart or you're 12 on the depth chart. Competitive arrogance, and I'm going to show a couple clips of what this means to me, but competitive arrogance is something that's earned, okay? You don't just walk around and have your head held up high and look down on people, okay? It's you lining up across from your opponent, whether it's corner, regardless who the defender is, and you know that he can't cover you because of the hours that you put in. And I think that's a huge mental edge. Certainly when I was playing, like, I knew that people could not stop me because I worked harder than them before we got to that point. And then the dog mentality, it's something that gets thrown around a lot, and I just like to clarify what it means to our guys. Dog mentality is not catching a 5-yard slant and standing over somebody beating your chest, or blocking somebody 6 seconds after the whistle and getting a flag. Dog mentality is you catch a slant over the middle, you get popped, you get up. You get back, you get set, you get aligned. Outside zone away, you cut off the safety. Third play, you go up top for a touchdown. This guy covering you comes off the field, and he tells his DC or his position coach, I can't cover him, I need help. We got to get the safety over the top. I can't cover him. And then here are just some examples of what competitive arrogance means to me.
A couple times, bad. Been chopping trees. I done something new for this fight. I done wrestled with.
Are you guys able to hear that, Coach G?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. The alligator. That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail. That's bad. Only last week, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean, I make medicine sick.
Man, dude.
Bad.
He knew that.
Fast. fast. Last night I cut the light off in my bedroom, hit the switch, was in the bed before the room was dark.
Incredible.
Fast.
Incredible.
And you, George Foreman, all of you chumps are gonna bow when I whoop him. All of you. I know you got him. I know you got him picked, but the man's in trouble. I'm gonna show you how great I am.
So, you know, he's up there and he's talking, and I really never talked shit when I played. It was just because it was not me, but there's a place, you know, there's a place for talking but it's got to be earned, right? Like Muhammad Ali is known for how hard he trained and how much time he put into his craft. So he didn't just walk up there and say, I'm the best. He earned the right to believe that, and he backed it up. And then here's another one. If you got little kids around and you have this presentation plan, there's a little bit of profanity in it.
Coaching. I'm 35 years old and I ran around them boys like they was schoolyard kids.
Yeah, when they pressed up on that slap, you better go talk to his ass, get in the fucking weight room.
He ain't on my level, never will be. He's not even on the same level as my kids.
So that's competitive arrogance to me, right? Like there's a line that could be crossed where it's too much, but the ultimate thing is it has to be earned. When there's no time left on the clock and you get one play, there's got to be somebody. You want one person on your team who's but the big thing is it's got to be earned, right? Like put the time in and you earn that mindset that nobody can stop you because of the work that you put in. And then you're going to hear this said a bunch throughout this presentation. No indicators. That's really in our vertical stem to our break point. No change in height. Now, obviously, as we progress in our vertical stem and we get deeper into it, there will be a gradual raise, just like sprinters coming out of the blocks, out of their acceleration phase. As they transition to max V, they're going to gradually rise up, but it's no abrupt change of height. I'm not accelerating and now I'm tall and then I'm dropping back again for my route or rising, but just to sink. Change in stride. We're not chopping our stride prior to break point unless we're working a hezi or something. There's a reason for it. Change in stride also speaks to our arms. Our arms are attached to our legs when we run. We're attached from our lat to our contralateral glute. We're attached from our shoulder to our contralateral hip flexor. Everything's attached. So when my arms start bullshitting and I'm throwing my hands up when I'm starting to break, that's a change in stride, and that's an indicator. The minute you do this, you're telling everybody in the stands I'm breaking. Okay, you don't run full speed up here. Eye discipline. Look through your guy. Look through your guy in your vertical stem. Obviously, there's a caveat, right? You can use your eyes as a weapon, and we're always a vertical threat. I'm in attack mode always. Everything's a vertical until it's not. Basic rules for Indy for me, we want to mimic joint angles and mechanics of the full routes. So a lot of times we'll go sub-maximal velocities just to save guys' legs, and it's hard to learn things and progress at things at full speed. You don't get a full algebra problem the first day of algebra and are expected to solve it. Same concept here. Keep it simple, right? We don't want to have these fancy bullshit drills. Most time guys, the more simple the drill is, the easier they're going to pick it up. And just because it's fancy doesn't mean it's going to translate. And that brings us to the next one. Everything has to have a reason. If your kid should be encouraged to question every drill you do, because it's our job as coaches to be able to connect the dots for them to show that it translates and it transfers. And if it doesn't, then it has no place in your individual. It has no place anywhere, really. We're not just throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. That's an experimental period. We don't do that in Indy with our guys. So the first route and drills we're going to go over are 90s. These are our digs or our square outs. We work snap downs. We work top 90s, box 90s, and full 90s. And I'll go over all of them. So here's our snap down drill. We have 5 cones here. So we're getting 4 reps on our left leg, our upfield foot, and then they'll flip over and get 4 reps on their opposite foot. Just for efficiency, getting a lot of reps in a short amount of time. They'll get a pat and go coming out. So we want a ball on every drill if we can. So we're snapping down here. This is really just to feel the biomechanics of where we want to be, okay? So he does a great job, nose over toe. My hips will sink, and my arms are going to stay tight to my body. What we do to approach the cones is irrelevant. We just want to eliminate choppy steps. This young man's first session, he's kind of feeling it out. His arms flailing a little bit. This is that rapid deceleration that starts our break point. We want to enter with our shoulders square to eliminate indicators. We'll progress. Okay, so here's an example of the snap in a 90. So here's Calvin Ridley. This is pause right before his snap down. This is going to be a violent snap. It's going to start his deceleration. He's going to rapidly absorb force. His nose is going to drop over his toe. His hips are going to sink. His arms are going to stay tight to his body. He's going to work this in a three-step. He's going to exit this in 3 steps. We try to use that 3 to 4 step golden rule to get out of square 90s and curls and comebacks. There's a caveat, and we'll discuss it. Okay, so here's a snap. Nose over toes, hips sink, arms tight. Now, one thing that me and the guys that I've been working with, really mainly over Zoom, is that this slight rotation here out of the snap down. And I'll explain what I mean by that. We snap down, we enter square, there's no indicator, okay? Now, the problem is, and it's easier on 90s than it is on 45s, for me to break with both toes pointed forward, it's hard for me to clear this hip, okay? So you're going to watch Ridley here. He's going to kind of slightly rotate his upper body and his hips so that now his feet are angled at a little bit. And Coach Brewer from Louisville had mentioned this, and this is where I got this terminology from, that we want that ankle eye, which is the malleolus or that inside bone of our ankle, pointing where we want this hip to drive to, okay? When my hips are square, I have a hard time clearing this hip and getting it completely open. I have to rip this hip open to 90 degrees. It's a lot harder. Whereas if I'm like this, it's a lot easier to rip it open. You're going to see an example right now. So let's bring that back. Now he's turned a little bit, and it's a lot easier to rip that hip open and pull flat. And we're going to have another example here with Julio, who is an absolute unicorn. So he's going to snap, nose over. Now he's going to slightly rotate out of his snap down. And by the time this foot hits, it's not completely pointed forward anymore. It's angled to where he could more efficiently produce the force to drive him out of his route and rip this hip open. So we had, at the time we had started filming these, we hadn't worked this as much, but still an applicable drill here. We're working the top of the 90-degree break, so just this one step that drives us out. What we're looking for here is we're applying force into the ground here. This is not passive. I'm pushing the ground away, and I want to limit change in height. If I have momentum going this way, and I'm trying to go this way, it's too many vectors. I want to keep and limit the movement vertically as much as possible. I want to try and keep whatever height I enter the break at the same throughout the break. Now, it's difficult. There will be some slight change as long as it's minimal. So the way this drill is set up, we have 4 other stations of this. So there's 3 or 4 reps these guys are getting. We got delayed here because of filming purposes. We're just working the top of the drill. So they're getting 1 rep, no ball, 1 rep, no ball, 1 rep, no ball, last rep, ball. If you're like Ohio State or somebody that has 77 GAs, you can get balls at every station. If you're not, then it's more applicable to get 1 ball at the end. Like I mentioned, we want to limit this change in height. We want to just produce the force in the ground this way to drive out this way. Really, really low intensity. You can really ramp up the volume here. So here's an example. Now this isn't terrible, but we want to clear this foot at the top. When I start making my breaks and my feet are even, I have a hard time getting this hip open and clearing this hip. I'm either going to have to round to get this hip open or take an extra step. So ideally we want, if I'm my left foot here in this case is on the line, I'd like to see my right clear the line. When it's put next to itself, it's difficult. It's a good rep here. And he does a better job of it here. Still gets a little bit of whip, but gets more vertical displacement in it. We don't want it to look like a jab. So we go from our snaps to our top 90s to box 90s. And, you know, these two guys that are doing it are both, you know, exceptional guys. They understand drills. They understand that when we use cones, we're not meeting the demands of the cones. They're just landmarks. So rather than chopping strides to meet the cones, we'll go past them. And we're just putting it all together now. So now we're getting our snap 1, 2, drive open. Snap 1, 2, drive open. So now Cole does a nice job here, and later you're going to see him rise up and then kind of sit back where his torso is like leaning at a 90-degree angle. And that's where you see guys fall either backwards where their feet get too far out in front. It looks like somebody pulled a chair out from underneath them. We want to keep that nose over. Okay, so now here, so we spoke about the 3-step cadence and the 4-step cadence. This is an example of 4-step, and we don't bastardize or just hammer down. It's got to be 3-step or it's got to be 4-step. Like paralysis by analysis is a real thing. The last thing we want these guys to do is overthink. So all this stuff we do where we're counting cadence, when we get to full speed, that shit's out the window. Like we just let the quality and quantity of the repetitions that we did on the cones submaximally translate to full speed. If we're not thinking about steps and all that shit at the top when we're running full speed routes. And what I mean by that here is he snaps on his inside foot here, so it's a 4-step break. It's no different, right? It's better than him chopping his stride to try and snap down to get out in 3. So you're going to see him snap left. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is what I mean. He's sitting back a little bit. Spends a little bit more time on the ground. Rounds into it. This rep's much better. And now he's snapping down on his outside foot. So it's going to be a 3-step cadence. Snap 1, 2. Good. So we progress to from box 90s to full 90s. So if you're doing if you're in camp, this would really just be routes on air. So like I never really like to run full routes in Indy because we always followed up with routes on air, and that was basic. We didn't need to waste time. We get so little time in Indy to do full routes with 15 guys. How many routes you're getting in? So I think it's a time to hone in on your skills more so than anything. So here's our full 90s. This is a sophomore in high school. He does a really nice job. You're going to see him flail his arms at the top. We've just been working cadence, really. Snap down, drop your weight, get in and out. I don't want to overload these kids with too many cues. Once the cadence, they're able to sink their hips, they're able to get out in an efficient amount of steps, then we'll start cleaning up the arms. But if we throw 5, if you know, 1 rep, he comes out and I tell him he's got to sink his hips more violently. The next rep, I tell him he's got to get his nose over his toe. And the 3rd rep, I tell him he's got to keep his arms tight to his body. His head's going to fucking explode. And he's not going to retain any of them. So we want to keep the cues to a minimum. And as they become autonomous, we can add more to them.
Got a question here for you, Coach.
Yes, Coach.
When they're doing the box 90s, do you still look at pad level?
Yeah, so in between the cones, I want them tall to simulate the top of a deeper out. That because we want to see that I'm vertical, and I'm snap. So we want them tall in between the cones to simulate that violent drop of weight. Because if they're leaning over, it's a lot easier to get in and out. If you're at the top of a 12-yard out or a 15-yard out, like you're going to be much closer to upright than if you are on a 5-yard out for sure. But we're trying to simulate it that we're at the top of a deeper out. So the pad level there is going to be high. I'm vertical, and I'm violent sink. As far as on the cones, we're still trying to get nose over toe. We're still trying to get our hips down. It should simulate that of what it should look like at a full speed route. Otherwise, the shit will not translate. And there's going to be an example of that coming forward. But if what we're doing on the cones, biomechanically, joint angles, does not mimic that at the full speed route, the shit will not translate. And that's really important for guys to understand. I've been blessed with some really good guys that buy in and they understand it. We got to treat submaximal drills like they're full speed. Like I can't, just because I'm going 60% and I can get out of a 15-yard, I can get out of the 45 in 2 steps because it's not full speed. Well, that's not going to work when I'm running a 15-yard comeback getting out in 2 steps. Does that make sense? Like there's one guy in the world that really has done it, and it's Chad Johnson, and he's an absolute unicorn. So, we got to mimic that of what we're trying to do. So here's a great example, just from the arms are flailing. This is what I mean by changing stride, right? His stride changes with his arm change. Like he's kind of doing I don't know, like the Macarena or something. But he does a nice job, snap, 1, 2, and drives out. Could pull the chin a little bit tighter to his shoulder. Coming out of this, when he gets out, and also you're going to notice a slight rise there, which causes him to round a little bit. I often tell my guys all the time, either marry the break or stay in the break, meaning we're like the break doesn't end here. This is where we're still in a race with the DB. Like the break isn't over. So we want to eliminate any change in height from entrance to exit. Like I want to stay whatever height I exit at, whatever height I enter at, I want to try and maintain throughout the break. And he does a really nice job producing force, driving his foot into the ground, and pushing himself out of his break. The change in height causes him to round a little bit. Here's a rep by Cole. We spoke about that before. He kind of gets his hips behind him a little. His nose not over. He still gets out of shit pretty efficiently, but he rounds it a little bit. So same thing with the arms. They're flailing a little bit, but now he's sitting in that chair, right? Like we're a straight 90-degree angle. I want to see more nose over toe. You can see him kind of round a little bit at the top because he's so upright. His feet are close together. He's so upright. He's going to be caused to round this hip open. And then here's an example of that rotation at the top after we snap down. Now, the big caveat here is we have to enter square. So I can't start leaning into my snap down or rotate prior to snap down because that's when the race starts. So if we start leaning early, we're giving him a head start. But the race from break point to catch point really begins once we start to descend at our hips or drop our weight or snap down. So right here is what I mean. He's square, but he starts to lean before this foot snaps or before he drops his weight. This is an indicator, right? Start leaning. But he does a really nice job rotating out to be able to run out of this thing. And that's what we refer to as that rotation. He's basically turned to where he wants to go already. And it's irrelevant how he exits as far as where his feet are facing, where his shoulders are facing post snap down. Because right now it's a race. Right now he's driving. Now hopefully this false acceleration causes him to bail slightly. But right now it's a race. So what we do to get out, it's the best way to exit. And like I mentioned previously, we don't really, we try to avoid the steps and the snaps. And it's really, when we're full speed routes, it's push your depth, violent drop. After, number of submaximal reps done properly, that shit will translate in. And it has. 45, so our curls and comebacks. We'll work snap down similar. I'm going to show a quick clip on some flaws you might see in the snap down drill. top 45s, similar to the top 90. And then my two favorite drills, tight drops to 45s, long drops to 45s, and then full 45s. So here's just an example. This is more of a stop than it is a curl comeback, but you're going to see the snap, nose over, arms tight. The only difference here would be if it was a curl, he would be driving downhill, wouldn't be standing tall. So here's another, same drill, snap downs you saw before. And this kid's a stud, but just to make an example, you're going to notice him kind of plant this one hard and then snap. Like, we don't want any change of stride or anything. Like, this should be effortless into the snap. Like, you're going to see him chop and then snap, chop and then snap. Whereas you watch the first two guys do it, they're kind of just into it. So here's the example of our top 45s. Now we have, from the time I had first put this together, we had altered this slightly to make it a two-step drill where we're simulating. I started on my snap down. Now my next step is rotating me, and my third step, my ankle eye is facing where I'm driving back downhill to. But for the sake of this presentation, we'll just coach through this one. It still has its place. Once again, we're limiting change in height. This is the big thing here, is we want to eliminate change of height while we drive out. We want to exit with the same pad height as when we enter. And the same setup, we have multiple drills set up behind it. And you'll see the guys, even like, this was before we mentioned the rotation a bunch. You'll see them even start to get that foot planted where it wants to go, because it's natural. It's easier for them. Biomechanically, it's much easier to get my hip open. If I'm like this and my feet are square, it's a lot harder to drive this hip open all the way that way than it is if, like, it's literally probably half the amount of degrees to drive the hip open when I start to rotate. The big thing is we enter square, though, because that's where the race begins. And then, so this was Chris's first session, and you're going to notice him stand tall. It's something we've worked on. And he gets stuck, right? Like, he gets stuck on that plant foot a lot more. So you'll watch his rep. He kind of gets stuck in the mud, and now you'll watch this young man's rep, and he drives right out. Pad level, it's much less of a change on the second rep. So here's one of my favorite drills, okay? This is a drill, we'll count our cadence, we'll count our snap 1, 2, because of the slow velocity of it. So we're able to be more cognizant of what we're doing. At each cone, the cones are about 2.5, 2.5, 3, 3, 4, and then 5. At the top, we're working a 45. You can also work a 90. So we're working snap 1, 2, nose over. It's sub-maximal, so you can get as many reps in as you want with this without beating your guys' legs up, right? Like, how many full-speed curls and comebacks are you going to run in Indy and then go run them in routes on air and then go run them in team before your guys' hamstrings are hanging off the bone? So 2 really good reps. These are guys, they treat their craft like professionals. Snap 1, 2, snap 1, 2, 3, 3-step, 4-step, irrelevant. We're not counting cadence at the full speed cones. So this young man played, he was in the CFL for a bit. This is what it looks like in a perfect world. Snap 1, 2, run out of the break. And then this is what I was referring to when we speak about guys. So this was his first session of ever with how we do things. You're going to see him just 1 step out of this because it's technically sub-maximal. It's a 5-yard comeback. I don't even know if he's sprinting into it. But if he tried to do this at full speed on a 12 to 15-yard comeback, it's going to be like almost like a speed cut comeback. It's going to be completely shitty. This is where the concept and guys understanding that this has to mimic the cadence, the biomechanics, the joint angles of a full speed route. So you'll look at the two differences here. Snap 1, 2, nose over, starts rotating, drives out. This is no different than if he's at a full depth comeback. When you watch this rep, that's a one step. If anything, it's more like a speed cut. Can't get out of a 15-yard curl or comeback like that. If you could, you'd probably be able to play anywhere you want. So the progression to that is we open it up a little bit. So now there's a higher velocity between cones. It's a higher demand on the joints. So the volume here will drop compared to the other drill. There's no cadence here. So this is push your depth, violent drop, violent sink, nose over, hip sink, arms tight to the body. No cadence. One thing we do tell the guys, if you're going to freeze it, that's great. If you're not, our weight's finishing forward. It's not finishing back. Ideally, we want them to be able to freeze it, because if you could freeze it, you can change the direction. There's no counting steps. There's no I'm trying to get out in 3 to 4. It's I'm pushing my depth. I'm getting the fuck out. It's a race. And the drills we do will translate to where they're getting out in 3 to 4. Now these next 2 reps, we can push a little bit more vertical, but they, their joint mechanics look good. You could see they're not full speed sprinting, but they get in and out really well. And these are both 14-year-old kids. And then here's, the kid he's been in a bunch of the clips. He's a professional. He handles his craft like a professional, comes to work every day. He's going to violently attack these cones, right? And he gets out really, really well. And he probably knows what's coming next, because I'm pretty sure he's in here. So you're going to notice something. I don't know if you guys picked up on it at full speed. And this is more so due to the cones. This is the downside of cones. We will remove them if it becomes a problem. He kind of chops his stride right here to meet the demands of the cones, okay? We've spoken about it. We'd rather snap here and get out, snap 1, 2, 3, than bullshit and get out in 3 because of the cones. And it's the same. We're not counting. We don't want to count cadence. Like when we're full speed, let the drills we do trust in what we've been doing to translate. And then here are some full speed reps, some curls, really good rotation, right? Snaps. By the time he exits, his foot's driving back to the quarterback. He's able to rip this hip open. I'd like to stay in there a little bit. Starts to rise a little bit. And that's a common error. This kid played center 2 months before this training session. Never ran a route. So, he's staring at the ground. I'd be staring at the ground too if I've never run a curl before. But gets out pretty smooth if you ask me. Sorry. So you're going to see a rise here that causes him to round this a little bit. Nice job attacking. Arms, right? He's telling his aunt, his uncle, his cousins in the stands. They're probably tapping each other on the shoulder. Okay, here comes his route. His arms are flying up. But nice job attacking. But here, like this is stay in the break, right? Like whatever I enter at, I want to stay at throughout my break. And then here's another really good example. And there's a coaching point in here, unrelated to the 45s. Like this is textbook, right? Like balls above my chin, like my head snaps back to locate. Like string nose to football, wherever that ball goes, my head has to snap to it. I can't catch what I can't see. So if my head stays at the quarterback and the ball's up here, you might as well go in a dark room, turn the lights off, pitch black, and tell your buddies to throw balls at you, because it's the same shit here, because you can't see it. Like you can't see you can't catch what you can't see. So if my chin doesn't snap back so I can locate, it's the same as being in a pitch black room trying to catch footballs. Okay? I got to snap that back wherever that ball goes. I take it with me. I never lose sight of the football, ever. And then he takes a picture with it, frames it the whole way. This is why he was where he was. This is why he was in the CFL. So here are some examples. Here's Michael Gallup, bottom of your screen. Attack, snap, drive out. Devontae Adams, snap. Exits a little early. It's okay. Soft cushion. Okay, so here's a really good example of that rotation we're talking about. And this is hilarious. Like, this guy does not have something to mention just for fun. This guy doesn't have help underneath, right? Like, there's no player supporting him underneath Tyreek Hill right now. Like, Tramon Williams is relating to the back. This Desmond King is fucking running away. Wants no part of the vertical stem of Tyreek Hill. Regardless, here's the rotation we're talking about. So he's going to enter square. Snap. 1, 2, 3. By the time his third foot hits, that ankle eye or malleolus, the inside ankle bone, is pointing where he wants his hip to open up to. Like he's running a squirrel route or a out and up comeback, out up stop, whatever you want to call it, which it basically becomes the same brake mechanics of a comeback. It's a 45. He opens, he rotates his shoulders just enough to where rather than being square trying to exit this, he's now here. It's a lot easier to rip this hip open that way than it is that way. And I think that's really important for us to understand. It's almost unnatural for me to push off this way to break here. Whereas when I'm here, I'm breaking I'm pushing off in the direction I want to finish in. Now let me let that route play out for you guys. And here's Coop. Push vertical. Snap. Pushing the ground away. This is freaky shit right here, right? Like, this is not a normal human, okay? You take a normal human and put them in this body position, they're not running out of this break. So to me, this is a unicorn rep. Like, when we look at these pro guys, we gather information. We find parameters that they all do, right? They all most of them get their nose over. They all sink their hips. Their arms stay tight to their bodies. There are, like, for me to expect my 14-year-old guys or my freshmen in college to look the way Julio Jones looks or Amari Cooper looks, especially day one or the first month, is literally criminally negligent. Like, you're doing them a disservice. So to me, this is Amari Cooper getting out from this joint angle. But to me, I would tell my guys, you're exiting your break early. Like, I want to stay in there a little bit more to be able to drive out. Not many people are going to be able to produce and absorb force from here, this far away from their center of gravity. And now he runs out of the break, which is an important coaching point. And the best comeback of all time. It's a shame it wasn't in the game. You talk about slamming your chin off your knee, okay? You talk about hip sink. Talk about nose over. Now he looks different. He looks different than Julio looks when they get in their snap down, right? They're like, how long are your femurs? How much mass are you carrying? Like, this shit all matters. So it's important we understand that guys are fitting these parameters that we spoke about, but not everybody's going to look the same when they enter and exit breaks, okay? And just, we'll let that shit play a little bit because it's so damn efficient, and then take a picture with it, right? Wherever the ball goes, my eyes go. So speed cut, same thing. These are digs and outs, okay? We don't teach speed cut like a route. We teach it like a separation tool at the top of a route. So anytime we have cushion at our break point, we're speed cutting. Okay, there's no need to break down. We don't want to give this guy time to drive it. We're in attack mode with our vertical stem, but we're trying to maintain the cushion from the DB's alignment. rather than create separation. We're trying to maintain separation rather than create it. So we'll work sub-maximal to quicks, a loop drill, and we'll go to full deep outs. So sub-maximal to quick outs, this is just, there are some cones here. There's a vertical component and a horizontal component to make these guys understand that we're not finishing flat immediately out of a speed cut. I'm not running full speed and breaking at 90, okay? Otherwise, you know, there aren't many human beings that are capable of doing that. When that happens, you'll see guys overly, they'll drag their toe too much because they have to pull flat quick. They can't do it. They can't absorb force enough to do it without dragging their toe. So they need that resistance and friction to slow themselves down. So we try to explain to these guys that it's like steering a bike with bike handles, right? If I'm riding my bike and I have my handles, if I try to make a turn, bikes don't turn flat, okay? They're going to kind of round into it, which is fine because the speed cut, we're saying we have cushion. We're attacking with our vertical stem. We're maintaining that separation by being in attack mode, providing no indicator. Okay, so when we get there, we don't want to reach with our plant foot. We want to make sure we understand that we are able to gain a yard or two coming out of our break, and we want to snap our chin to our shoulder. That'll help pull us flat and locate the ball, and in the perfect scenario, pull us negative friendly to the quarterback. So here we have a drill. Our older guys will just treat this as 2 full quick outs. Our younger guys will go sub-maximal here, and then full speed quicks on the green cone. I tell these guys less is more. Like we don't need to give any head jabs. If it's cushion, we're just looking through this guy, look him in his eyes before you kill him, and leave him and roll it. And they'll get a ball here coming out. We like to snap chin, rip elbow. Arms running through the break. Something we definitely need to improve on. Snap chin, hips are turned to the sideline. And we have this set up on both sides. So this is just rapid reps. Like there's limited standing around. We're going continuous reps. You can even add a second rep on a second quick and a third quick here. So it's just guys in 5 to 8 minutes, guys are getting 20 speed cuts in. Next drill is a loop drill. And I try to do this with our older guys. Like these guys that we've spoken about, they understand not to meet the demands of the cone. We're just working 2 speed cuts in a row. So now I'm vertical. I'm speed cut. Bad drawing because that's too flat. I'm speed cut. Now I'm back vertical and I'm speed cutting again. I tell these guys like speed cuts are the easiest routes in the book. Once you in the tree, once you get it, once that light bulb clicks, because all you're doing is no change in stride. And you know, a good speed cut, you shouldn't even hear the difference in stride, right? Like if my eyes were closed and I heard your feet striking on your vertical stem, I shouldn't know you ran a speed cut because you put more force into it. Now, is it going to be a little bit more force? Sure, but it shouldn't be. It's not a violent slam. The only time it's a violent slam is when we got to get it a little bit more flat because a guy is a little bit tighter and he's bailing. And now I got to pull this thing flat underneath him. But if it's cushioned and it's high, it's effortless. It truly is effortless. So we'll go sub-maximal quicks. Sometimes we'll go to the loop drill based on who the group is. Here are some examples of quick outs. You know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, okay? People have been running this shit for years. Keyshawn Johnson doesn't even do a great job pulling his head to shoulder, but attacks vertical. Less is more. Vertical, roll it, leave him, okay? I'd like to see him get his chin pulled quicker, pull him a little bit more flat, but since he attacks vertical so damn well, it doesn't even matter, right? Darryl Jackson, Super Bowl about 15 years ago, same shit. Attack, attack, attack. Doesn't really give him anything, right? No head fake. He wins by running through him. Chin to shoulder, finish. And then we'll progress to deep outs, the full deep out. It's a good rep. young kid, does a nice job. Even that head, like, less is more to me. Like, we don't even need to give that. But it's not something we need to nitpick right now. Does a really nice job just rolling into it, right? Like chin to shoulder, pull myself flat. No change, really no change in speed. That's the whole point of the speed cut. That's why we're able to gain ground. We're able to maintain our speed level because we're gaining ground. We're not breaking flat at 90. And here's another example. We'll go to some pro examples of it before we move on. So this is a really nice example. Here's Ted Ginn. He sprays it because it's outside leverage. He's a little bit condensed. Sprays to the outside hip. But now there's nothing to tell this guy. This is right before he rolls over. His shoulders stay here. His hips stay here. Stride stays the same. He still has the same knee drive. Nothing to tell the corner that he's not pushing vertical. We hit play. Foot strikes, doesn't reach, and just rolls into it. We're always in attack mode. Always in attack mode, no indicator. Okay? Another example, Michael Thomas. This is what I mean by completely effortless. Michael Thomas is number 3 here. He's working on the safety who's not on the screen. Nothing to tell this safety he's not continuing on his vertical stem. Effortless, rolls right off that inside foot. Cushion at the top. Not even on the screen. Breakdown for what? Head fake for what? There's 7 yards of separation. Just roll this over. If you provide no indicators, ball's on time, he's late. He's got to react. He's late. It's what we mean by less is more. There's a high attention to detail. So our job as coaches is to equip these kids with the understanding of when to do what and let them kind of use that movement toolbox and apply it. So not only are we teaching the speed cut and how to do it, we're explaining when to do it. You got cushion at your break, leave them. Now here's a shitty one, real shitty, okay? I remember watching this game. I was like, oh shit, here we go. Bullshit at the top. Okay, and I think some coaches still teach this, and that's fine if it works. I'm a young pup as far as coaching goes. I don't have a ton of skin in the game like some guys, but to me this is inefficient. I'm rolling off my outside foot. Okay, my shoulders are not out of my break, but my break foot is there. So technically, I'm breaking off my outside foot. Okay, but I haven't pushed myself into my route yet. Because the laws of physics say I can't break off my outside foot and put force into the ground this way off this foot unless I'm completely bow-legged, okay? I want to roll off this inside foot and keep everything square until I do. But now I start leaning and I roll off this outside, and before I even get out of my break, my right foot to run me out hasn't struck the ground yet. The DB's out. He's out of his break. And this is the result. And let's see at full speed. Okay, leaning for break. I apologize. I had to put the teach tape in on this. But we'll get to full speed. So that lean there, like he's out late and he doesn't finish negative. But that all stems from the shitty break at the top. Coach, any questions before we move to slants?
Nothing right now, Coach.
Okay. All right, so slants versus off, very similar to speed cut. So while we're running speed cuts, deep outs, quick outs versus cushion, slants versus cushion should never be, it's routes on air for us. It's completely routes on air. We're not even really manipulating a cover defender. His alignment is giving us access to our route. It's no different than running routes on air. We have 3 with an asterisk because some teams run 5-step, some teams run 2-step, completely irrelevant, arbitrary. The attack with your vertical stem, no indicator, stays true no matter what. Less is more, as we spoke about. Angle of departure is going to vary based on scheme, coverage. So we're not going to dive into the angle of departure right now. So less is more. I want to attack. And I want this foot to strike as normal and similar to where it would if I was just continuing vertical on my third step. Is it, you know, it's tough. There's some hip mobility things in play there. So oftentimes it's going to get a little outside of your framework, and we're going to take a look at what happens when it gets too far outside of your framework. Like we spoke about, I don't need to jab or give any juice here because we're saying it's cushion. It's a 250-pound tight end running smooth slants. Less is more. Okay, so here's an example. When we get too far outside of my framework, I'm going to spend more time here. This requires more force absorption than this. Ultimately leading to more time on the ground. And you're going to see him spend just a little bit more time on the ground. Let me bring this back so we can see it full. And it's minimal stuff, right? But this is why we work. Clean shit up. There's a little bit more time on the ground. Hand flares up a little bit. Here's our center. Smooth. And here's an example of make it look exactly the same. So pre-snap, we talk about, and this isn't a coverage ID presentation. Pre-snap, we gather information. Okay, I'm reading the defense. Where's my corner line? Where's my inside player line? Where's my safe? Regardless, it's subject to change at any time. So now we treat this like cushion because it's bail. Okay, this is his second stride. Okay, joint angle, forward lean. Nothing to tell the DB this is not a vertical route. He's accelerating. Good body position. This is right before he drives off his slant. The one difference to me here is there's a little bit more knee flexion in the back leg. He's not picking that up. Okay, that's something that he's not picking up. Shoulders stay square. Hips stay square. Joint angles stay the same. I'm still in attack mode. Okay, still in attack mode. I'm going to spend no time, and I'm just going to pull this thing and drive out of it. Less is more. He does a good job finishing flat. Less is more. Make it look exactly the same. Attack, single pressure step and exit. Stevie Johnson way ahead of his time. Same thing. Less is more. What are you manipulating here? Like, you get to the top of your route right now. Okay? There's 7 yards of cushion. Just stick your foot in the ground and go. This is what we mean by less is more. This is routes on air. They might as well not line them up out here. The only way this guy drives this route is if we bullshit our stem. Okay? We provide indicators, which is what we spoke about. So now we go slants versus head up or inside press. We'll work a diamond release. The big thing here is we got to threaten vertical. We have to understand that's the basis of this route. We got to get this guy's hip flip to turn around with the vertical stem. We have to understand our cover defender's alignment. We have to be able to react to when our cover defender flips that hip, because that's going to determine how we exit. And we prepare for combat at the top. So we'll just work regular, no cover defender, just bursting for 3 and snapping and pulling underneath. This will be the first drill we'll work on it. Burst for 3, snap underneath. Now this rep, this is what you'll see. You'll see guys bullshit their strides here. This isn't threatening a corner. Corner's chilling. Corner's relaxed. Put him in oh shit mode. Open him up, okay? Next progression, we'll add a DB. We'll open up. Now we teach throw by if he's hipped or if he's latched. Okay, if he latches early, we'll teach throw by. Arms extended fully, we're going elbow to shoulder. Okay, and we'll even pull him through us. If he takes a real high angle, we're leaving him. We're not touching him. We're going to snap it underneath him. And if we're hipped, we're going throw by at low back, where low back meets the buttocks. Now, angle of departure is determined by where we snap and the angle we want to break at. The flatter I break, the more difficult it's going to be to exit on a single pressure, okay? So keep that in mind here. Kendrick Bourne breaks extremely flat. You're going to see him 1, 2 to exit his diamond. But this is the position we need the DB in to give us the green light to snap it underneath him. He can't recover from here, okay? He's turned to run. He's opened up to chase the vertical. Now he snaps completely flat. That's why he gets out in 1, 2. The other reason why guys will get out in 1, 2, just like counting cadence, like we're not worried about, it doesn't have to be, I have to get out in 1 step. Whenever I make my decision that this guy's opened his hips up, it's time to leave. So whatever stride is on the ground, that's what's initiating my break underneath him. That's what's initiating my break to the slant, back in. And he pulls flat. So here's Coop. So Coop eats up, he makes it look exactly like a vertical. He eats up space and threatens outside. So he eats up, little hesitation, and bursts. Hips turned, exit. Now he's less flat, right? Like Kendrick Bourne came out here. Coop kind of rounded out, and it's completely, it's almost arbitrary, right? If it's true man, it really doesn't matter. Both should be on you. Ideally, flatter is better. You want to eventually finish flat. So eliminate undercut. But he's beat so bad. The major takeaway here is the way he threatens vertical, right? Like guys will rush this. Guys will rush this vertical stem. This is the route to me. And here's an example of him two-stepping it. Open him up. 1, 2. Snap it underneath. And he's ready for combat, right? He's ready for combat. Because when DBs get beat, they shoot their hands. So we always got to be prepared. So last thing on the drill work, and then we'll go to Indy. Just some things I use with my Indy. Jabs and crossovers. So either at the line of scrimmage or at the top of the route. So we need to identify our cover defender's alignment. It's a violent shift of weight from hip to hip. Our foot, our hip, our shoulder, and our head are all moving together. And we're trying to be sudden. First drill, okay, so we'll look at some NFL reps here. Here's Michael Thomas at the top, hip shift. And here's Allen Robinson working a hip shift on a inside fade or fade from condensed. He's shifting his way hip to hip, pushing off his insteps. It mimics that of a basketball crossover. I'm sure everybody's heard it. So I usually don't like using ladders. I think they're pre-planned. I think there's better things to do. But this drill I like very much for our single jabs because it gives us a line that we need to cross with our foot and our hip. So our foot and hip have to enter this ladder, okay, with our jab. So we should be switching halfway through the ladder. The tempo we go at is up to these guys, but we want to be patient and sudden. We're pushing off that instep. And I'll do this like a circuit, and it's continuous, okay? So coming out, we're working, I call them running singles, okay? What we do between the cones is kind of irrelevant. I like to have them keep their shoulders square, but we're looking patient. Sudden. A suddenness, we're pushing off the insteps. Feet, hip, shoulder, head. Feet, hip, shoulder, head. Right from there, we're working the line of scrimmage double, okay? Tight end with a lot of juice here. Insteps, foot, hip, shoulder, head. Line of scrimmage, triple. This is one big circuit. Line of scrimmage, triple. Foot, hip, shoulder, head. Okay, pushing off my insteps. Right from here, running double, running triple. Okay, so now this is like complete freedom of movement here. They're just working a hip shift back and forth. They're in their heads, they're thinking, I got to move a defender. I'm moving a defender. And there's one more progression from here. We're shifting our weight from hip to hip. We're pushing off our insteps. We're going to get some internal rotation of the hip. And then the progression from here, and this is my favorite thing to do with guys, is provide them an external cue, an external stimulus, a defender that they need to move. And you'll see how much better the drill looks when you give them that. Okay? And then we'll just progress it into like a stretch slant with some jabs at the top. Our terminology is arbitrary. They have complete freedom of movement here. This is the first day we work these. Amount of space we eat up is determined by DB's alignment, right? Like how far is he from us? Okay. So now structuring our indie. Structuring our indie. So time is money. Time is money. Okay. I haven't been at the college level a little bit, and even the high school level. Like, we don't have much time, and that's why I have this picture here. So everything we do has to have a reason. Okay. And if it doesn't, there's no place for it. I got this from Coach Hogs. I think he's still in here from a podcast he did. Like, our indie should mirror what we're looking to work versus the specific opponent in game week. So the team we're playing doesn't press. They don't press. Well, then the volume of press work we do is diminished that week. It doesn't mean we throw it out the window, because we still need to grease that motor pattern. We don't want to lose it. But the volume of it is decreased in comparison to a team that we play that always presses to the boundary. Like, no matter what, boundary corners press. Like, we know we're getting some press. Or they always press the outside receivers. Or in third and long, they're third and short, they're walking up on their nickels walking up on our slot. They're pressing, no free release. Like, now our press release volume in practice is increasing. That's what I mean by have a reason. Ton of comebacks, ton of double moves in. Then we should be working, snapping head nods to the quarterback, even sub-maximally in Indy. We should be working 45s in Indy. What do we need? So game film, what are we lacking? What are we struggling with? Are we struggling getting out of 45-degree breaks? Are we reaching on speed cuts? Are we struggling winning inner out breakers when we're latched? We can't throw by. We just don't have the sequencing. Match it, mirror it with our game film. Like, what are we struggling? What do we need? Once again, doesn't mean we throw out our strengths, right? We still need to work those motor patterns, because once you lose it if you don't use it, whatever the fuck the saying is. I don't really know, but we got to keep working our strengths, but focus on what we need, like distribute the volume where it needs to be distributed. And then efficiency and intensity, I think this is real important. Soft tissue injuries occur two main reasons, okay? Biomechanical issues, and in football, it's usually our vertical stem, so it's a sprint. I don't think we get into sprint mechanics a ton in practice, but load management, okay, fatigue, is a major issue and a major cause of tissue injuries. It is negligent of us to run our indies as conditioning. I'm sorry, but it is. It's an old school mentality, and it's bullshit. And it's it's a paradigm we need to shift away from, because practice doesn't end at Indy. It picks up after Indy. Okay, so you go from Indy, you go to routes on air, you go to one-on-ones, you go to 7-on-7 or skelly, you go to team. Okay, if they're fatigued by Indy, A, your motor output or your route efficiency is going to be shit, and B, the increase of injuries through the roof. Okay, so I created, so this is what I like to do with my drills. I like to create a bank with the intensity of each drill. And I won't really schedule high intent. Oh, sorry, I can't read what the fuck that is. I won't schedule high intensity drills in back-to-back days. Okay? It's just something I won't do. I like to undulate the load that our guys have. And I think that's real important. Letting them kind of recover a little bit doesn't mean the quality of work is gone. Like, I think that's a major misconception, right? Like, work smart. You can working smart is working hard. Like, paying a high attention to detail in a slower drill and making it look exactly the same as a full speed rep, that's working hard. Like, that's hard to do. It's hard work. Okay. And I think that's really important. So I like to limit, red is high intensity, blue's intermediate, green is low. Green is, you can do as many of as you want. There's a softer tissue demand. You can recover from it quicker. Intermediate is where, like, I'll move to the next slide. Okay. So high intensity, this is our red. High force production, high force absorption, high tissue demand. You're putting a lot on your muscles, your tissues to absorb force. Increase the rest time, lower the volume. Lower intensity, which is lower rest time, we can as much reps as we want. Okay. You're diminishing your force production, or how much force we're putting into the ground, because we're at a lower velocity, and it's diminished force absorption, so easier to recover from. You can decrease the rest time, increase the volume. Now, the intermediate is the gray area. Okay, Charlie Francis said anything moderate is high. Okay, and that's similar to this. So this is where pedagogy comes in, right? Like, your ideas and ability to identify load management. How much is too fast? How do my guys feel? Talk to your guys. How do their bodies feel? Like, they're the ones playing, like, not us. So our egos should have no place in indie scheduling. Okay, how do my guys feel? That has to go into how I plan and how I schedule certain drills. And that's it, Coach.
Sorry about that, Coach.
No, you're good.
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, no, it was really good stuff right there. Guys, if you have any questions, man, drop it in the chat before we wrap this one up. Obviously, Coach shared his contact information. I thought that stuff with the indie schedule, man, is really important. Really good to know, structure, and that's, that's universal for any position. You know what I'm saying? And the most important aspect, though, is, working the stuff that you're going to work in the game. I think that's beyond important. Don't just go out there just to run around and do whatever, you know what I mean? Just to fill up some time, use your time wisely, because you are limited, especially in high school. We don't get a whole ton. So we want to really make sure we're working on the stuff that's going to benefit us. Okay. So does anybody have any questions? You see that one, Coach?
Yeah, I got one in. Yeah. So pre-practice for me is, I like to put things we're not going to hit in the indie schedule. So, like, if we don't have releases on the schedule that day, like, work some releases. And then I don't work ball drills in indie. Like, I just think the time is too precious. And I think go catch footballs, right? Like, you want to work over the shoulder, like, have somebody throw you the ball over the shoulder and track it. Like, we'll work that pre-practice and post-practice. Ball drills 100%. But in pre-practice, post-practice, other than that, it's really things that we're not getting to that day in practice. And that'll be posted for the guys. Like, they'll have a list of things, and that list usually stays the same, or we'll have a pre-practice routine that they can follow. But I think structure is important, but it's usually you want them to select things that we're not going over in practice.
So does your pre-practice routine vary by the day as well?
Yeah.
So how often are you changing it up?
It's based on what we need, really. Like, I have a sheet that I use, and there's multiple things on it, and I prefer the guys to hit the things, because we don't have time for all of them. I prefer the guys to hit the things that we are not going over in practice, and they'll know ahead of time. And the other thing is, like, ball drills are encouraged post and pre. So we try to get a ball every drill. It's hard when you don't have 6 GAs, right? Like, it's just tough. Yeah. So, but we try to get a ball every drill.
Armor shot after a week.
Yes. Yes.
I know that deal, man. I know that deal. Anybody else have any other questions, guys? Coach, you want to just throw up your contact in there one more time, just in case anybody missed? I know some guys came in late. There you go. There you go. Obviously, feel free to reach out. You know, his Twitter's there.
Yeah, please.
If anybody has any questions, yeah, absolutely. Have any questions? You know, coach is working on another presentation that's taking him a bit. Should be awesome though.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long one.
He's gonna need some time for that, but that's gonna be really good. Definitely appreciate him coming on here, especially the short notice, man. He definitely hooked your boy up here, but always good, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
And once again, guys, to the coaches in here, man, just a big shout out to you guys, and you know, we want to thank you for tuning in this morning and taking the time out of your morning. So really good stuff, Coach. Appreciate your time, man.